All right, everybody. We are live with the Combatcast, and it is the man they call Dave, and it's Chevy. We're going to talk about last week's fight night. We're going to talk about fights that are coming up that we want to see. Well, that we're going to see this year, but what fights we're looking forward to the most out of the fights that have been announced. But before that, Chevy, why don't you tell people what we got coming up?
All right, October 7th, UFC Fight Night, Dawson versus Green. This is a very good fight night, matchmaking-wise. Looking forward to that one. Then October 14th, UFC Fight Night, Youssef versus Barbosa. It's an exciting main event for that card. And then finally, October 21st, we're back with UFC 294, Makhachev versus Oliveira 2. I'm sure that we'll talk about that one later, but very excited for that rematch. Two of the best, not only in the division, but pound for pound for sure.
Yeah, and we got Hazmat Chimaev and Paulo Costa on that card as well.
Yeah.
So there's a lot. I was looking at this recently. There's a lot of good cards coming up at the end of the year now.
Yeah, we didn't talk about this, but let's go over this really quick. UFC 300 is coming up soon, like I think it'll end up being like April or something like that. Who do you want to see on 300? We didn't talk about this at all. I know it's cold, but
it's gonna be April, right? You said?
I think so, somewhere around there.
Yeah, it's a tough one to say. Like,
who do you want to see?
Well, I'd love for it to be a giant card.
Yeah.
Right. So, I'd like
to have you fumbled the bag with 200, right? Because they had the whole thing with Connor, and that like dropped off in 205, ended up being the giant card, right?
Yeah. And there was issues like it was actually supposed to be Cormier and Jones, I believe, because Anderson Silva.
Anderson.
Short notice, yeah.
Stupid yellow mat they did.
Yeah, Brock versus Mark Hunt, of course, and then that kind of got weird because Brock failed at that steroid trial or steroid test afterwards, and then there was a whole trial which recently got dismissed for Mark Hunt. But yeah, that's an interesting one because I guess I want to see what happens with this Jones CP fight that we're going to talk about soon. Like a heavyweight title fight is always really good. I know people might get mad at me, especially like hardcore MMA fans, but a Conor fight, if it could happen, would be big for UFC 300. I'm not saying that would be, as an ideal MMA fan, like that's the one fight I would want. But if we're going to draw attention and it's going to take a while, maybe we can get Conor and Chandler finally done for UFC 300. I know people keep trying to say, oh, maybe January, but like maybe April's fine if we can do that. But, get me on this card Ilya Topuria. Is that Ilya Topuria? Versus Volkanovski. With that, maybe get an Adesanya Strickland rematch, or if Pereira ends up winning that light heavyweight title and you want to go straight to Pereira and Adesanya for the light vacant, for the light heavyweight title would be vacant then, but for the light heavyweight title, I would be down for that. I know Jamal Hill deserves a rematch when he comes back, but Adesanya versus Pereira for the light heavyweight title could be money too.
Yeah, I want to see Jim Miller. Obviously, he wants to retire at 300. I think Conor on the card, it would help make it a big card. Obviously, I don't picture him not being the main event in a card though.
With him. Like he has to be the main event, and it's almost like I don't really necessarily want him as the main event. I just want him to bring eyes on the card.
Yeah, so and title fights are more important. I want to see whoever wins this Oliveira and Makhachev. I want to see Volkanovski fight them, whether it's the rematch with Islam or a shot against Oliveira. I just thought that was an interesting question. There are a couple of guys I am looking forward to as it gets closer for sure. The UFC has been doing better, with these retirement things, just promotion wise in general. So hopefully they'll do better. They really fumbled the bag with 200. They tried, but
Yeah.
unsuccessful. So
I mean, and I'll throw this fight out there, and people might get mad at me for this one too. But and I'm not. This does not have to be the main event. But if you want to do a special attraction, the one fight you could really take advantage of with their new WWE merger, and again, you would have to do something as a special attraction, kind of wave the draw. I said, but if you want to do a Bobby Lashley versus Brock Lesnar in a heavyweight MMA fight, just let these two big guys beat the shit out of each other, have the spectacle of it. But it's just one fight on your main card. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be the main event because, again, it's 300. You could have a Connor in the main event, or you could have a light heavyweight or heavyweight title fight. I'd be down for something like that.
Yeah, that would be cool for sure.
It's the only fight that honestly makes sense to me if you're going to have somebody from, say, WWE crossover. It would have to be one. Too.
If Jones wins or whatever, and he decides he wants to stick around for some reason, I know he said that he was interested in fighting Brock in the past. So
I'm sure. Yeah.
So I mean, that would be a huge fight. So, all right, let's talk about last week's fight card. Fghts versus Gamrot. We're just gonna talk about. Well, first of all, undercard was very good. Tim Means had a great finish. Marina Rodriguez beat the shit out of Michelle Waterson Gomez. It was brutal. If it doesn't happen very often in MMA, but I think Corner should have thrown in the towel on that one for sure. Charles Jourdain, Ricardo Ramos had great grappling for as long as it lasted in that first round. Very exciting grappling match.
I like Jourdain. He's really looking good to me.
It was a good warm up for this co-main event, which was Bryce Mitchell versus Danny Ige. You didn't get to watch these, right?
I didn't co-main, so yeah. Tell me about. Obviously, I saw everybody showing Bryce Mitchell in the Bible. That was just memes everywhere. Bryce Mitchell is out of control right now in some of his interviews. I don't know if you see the stuff with Michael Bisping.
Yeah,
he's insane. But
yeah, he came out to that North of Richmond song that is very popular. And then, yes, when he was being introduced, he grabbed the Bible and held it up and screamed freedom while he was being introduced. The fight was pretty good, as we expected. Danny Ige, pretty dominant on the feet. He stuffed some takedowns early on, but started getting worn down. He had a good cut going over Bryce's eye. They had to look at one point, but Bryce held on, ended up getting the takedowns and getting the decision win. And then, of course, he gets a post-fight interview with Bisping, who you were just talking about. He had an issue with when they were talking about evolution before. I'm sure people have seen the video, but he obviously does not. He denies evolution. I think he believes in flat Earth because he wanted to debate Rogan about flat Earth. He's a crazy person. But anyway, pulls in Danny Ige. He says, he says that the wildfires in Hawaii are man-made. They're not wildfires. They're some sort of conspiracy, and Satan is taking over the world, and he wants Dan Ige to lead because Dan is also a Christian, just not an insane person, but he wants to have Dan Ige lead a prayer or whatever. Obviously, production team tells Bisping to get the fuck out of there. So it doesn't get you, but they obviously share a little prayer after the fight or whatever. It is wild, but I don't know what you do with Bryce Mitchell going from here. I know there was questions asked Dana White's Contender Series this week to Dana about that, and Dana said that they don't muzzle guys. He is glad that this is a place where people can express their views and all that.
As nutty as you may be, too.
And unless you're Bilal Muhammad and you want to walk out with a Palestinian flag or something, you're not allowed to do that. But you can hold up the Bible and scream freedom or whatever. So that's great. Yeah.
Was ESPN deal? I wonder Fox, or I wonder what that was about. I'm trying to remember that situation.
The flag thing.
Yeah,
I think it comes down to not wanting Russians to carry flags in because of the Russian war. So with Ukraine. Okay. So that also goes over to the Palestine-Israel thing. And we're not a political show, so we won't get into it. But
no, interesting though.
But it's just funny that Dana forgot that he does muzzle people in certain circumstances.
I'm sure.
But let's move on. Main event. Very excited for this, obviously. Rafael Fiziev versus Mateus Gamrot, striker versus wrestler situation. And unfortunately, we didn't get to see that much. Fiziev was looking good on the feet, and early on, unfortunately, he threw a kick, and the knee that he was planting on, you could see in the slow motion replay, he tore something, his kneecap, like went around his knee awkwardly. And it turns out it was an ACL. So he's going to be out for, at least 6 months. Gamrot gets the TKO win, I guess. So he'll be moving on in the lightweight rankings.
Well, that's pretty good. I mean, what do you think for Gamrot? Anybody you want to see him in there with next? Or?
I don't know. Didn't really get to see that much from him there. I don't know without looking at the rankings off the top of my head, but I'd say, obviously I think Fiziev was one ahead of him. So give him the next guy, whoever, I think that would be number 5, whoever's number 5 in the rankings, depending on matchups.
I don't know how he would feel about this, but given that he probably still wants to hang around and he wants big fights, maybe Dustin Poirier should take one fight like this. And I like Poirier, but maybe you give one guy a chance to kind of make your name. He doesn't need to be doing that all the time because he doesn't want to be a stepping stone. But maybe since he's still so near the top and is one of the best in the world, you take on one of these young guys, and if you beat him, you get back in a position where you can be. Or on the flip side, maybe one of these young guys, okay, they do get to win on you. And then maybe you got to look at the hard facts. Okay, maybe I need to change something, or I need to maybe have one more fight and call it a career or something because I've done so much anyway.
I don't think that Poirier is looking for any of that. I think he only wants big fights or title fights at this point. And he built that, stole a lot of that hype from Conor. So that is what it is at this point. I'm not disagreeing with you. I just don't think it'll happen.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I'd like to see once in a while. I don't want to see guys just get names made off of each other, but Poirier is one of those guys that his name is still so valuable that one loss wouldn't necessarily kill him. And I also firmly believe that he's just not that guy. Like, he could beat any of these guys still. Right. So it's like, I'd like to see an opportunity, because especially for that division, one of the fun things that I love about it has been Gaethje versus Poirier, Chandler versus Poirier, and all these around. But man, maybe somebody should get a shot. Fiziev had that shot.
Right, with Gaethje, yeah.
Right. So maybe it's time for Gamrot to maybe get a shot to it. Somebody here.
Yeah,
but
I'd also like to see Dariush getting a chance to work his way back up.
Absolutely. And then maybe that's a good fight too. Gamrot Dariush. But all right. Let's talk about it. Out of the fights coming up, our top 5 fights that are already been made. So basically, the only criteria is the fights have been made. So for the rest of the year, I know this one's it's the best we got here. These top 5 fights for the rest of the year, that we're looking forward to. And I was thinking about, why don't we just do this? Why don't you read me off one? And then I'll comment, and then I'll give you my number 5.
All right. My number 5 is not an MMA fight. It's a boxing fight. A fight coming up pretty soon, actually. I believe in the next couple weeks. Tyson Fury versus Francis Ngannou. I'm really looking forward to that.
Good for you for saying that. I didn't even think in that realm. It's so funny because I saw Francis on Joe Rogan and everything, and I just thought to myself, man, one of these days, somebody in MMA is probably going to win in one of these boxers situation. Anderson Silva already has, but it'd be cool to see somebody pull out the upset. I see no way Francis can actually do this. It's such a bad matchup. But man, when you look at what this guy's been able to will into existence, there's just that glimmer of hope that there's something on this guy's side that's going to make him pull this off. But man, from simply if you forget all that, this is a bad matchup because it's a guy who can actually hit just as hard. It kind of eliminates that puncher's chance. Oh, and by the way, he also moves like a lightweight. So it's a tough matchup.
We don't see Francis really get hit. We're going to see him get hit by Tyson. And Tyson, like you said, hits very hard. Greatest heavyweight fighter maybe of all time, certainly currently. So tall ask. Francis has a puncher's chance. I didn't give Sean O'Malley a chance when he had his puncher's chance and he knocked out Aljo. So it makes it interesting. But yes, if I was going to bet money on it for some reason, I would bet all my money on Tyson Fury.
So my number 5 fight. This might be a hot take by some people, but I kind of agree with old Uncle Chael Sonnen recently. Paddy Pimblett versus Tony Ferguson. And I agree for a lot of the reasons he does, although I'm not as convinced as he is, per se. I'm a little more open-ended on this. A lot of fans, I think, are upset because they're upset at the idea of Tony having one more fight and Paddy probably stopping him or beating him. I can understand that, but I don't think this is a done deal. And I think Chael makes an interesting point. Tony is on a downslide, 6 in a row. He's losing to top guys, though. Bobby Green would be maybe the least of that. And Bobby's a talented fighter, but he's not Gaethje, Oliveira, Chandler, all these other people that Tony fought. Now, that being said, Paddy Pimblett has not shown us any. I mean, he's not saying he doesn't have potential, but he's yet to show us. If you had booked Paddy Pimblett versus Bobby Green, I'm not convinced that Bobby Green's not going to sub his ass or knock his ass out.
Right.
So Chael's point is, you have one guy who's never been in the top 10. And I think that is what kind of makes this fight interesting. It's almost the perfect fight in a lot of ways, with the exception of Tony. If he can beat Paddy, he might go on to take some more fights that he's probably not really, able to at this point in his career. It'd be nice for Tony if he got the win and got out of Dodge, or if Paddy beats him, whatever, good for Paddy. It's just, I think it's a more interesting fight than people were giving it credit for.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's a winnable fight for Tony, albeit a hard one. I would say before he got subbed by Bobby Green, who had one submission ever before that, I would have given Tony a better chance. I think the decline is so far at this point. I'm not saying he can't win, but we're really going to need to see some shades of. He's going to need to get better and not worse from his last fight, and we haven't seen him get better in 5 years, 4 years, something like that.
He's just declining.
Yeah, he's just declining slowly. So, pretty sharply actually. So, I would lean towards Paddy.
Yep.
But Paddy should not overlook Tony because he is dangerous everywhere. He's impossible to train for because he's so unique and awkward. So, I think this is fine matchmaking. Good step up for Paddy. Someone to build a bit of a name off of, keep that hype going, but a winnable fight for him. And, this should be Tony's last fight.
Regardless.
Win, lose, or draw. Yeah. But he can go out with a win. It's possible.
Yeah. And one other factor in this fight going into this, Paddy's been out for almost a year now.
Yeah. Wait, he had an ankle injury. You know, he likes to balloon up or whatever. I don't know what he's looking like these days. Got married and all that, but
yeah, he's actually been keeping his shape by here, and he's been staying in condition. Good for him.
All right, let's move on to my number 4. John Jones versus Stipe Miocic. That's going to be my number 4.
I got the same one for number 4, so I had the exact same one. So, why don't you go first? I'll let you talk about it.
I don't know. There's not too much to say that everyone doesn't already know. Obviously, heavyweight title, John Jones, whether we want him to be or not. Some of our friends are not going to like this, but he is the greatest fighter of all time. As much as we dislike him as a, human being, Stipe has the greatest accolades of a heavyweight of all time. Young Stipe versus John Jones, much more interesting fight, but I think Stipe is still within a shot of, surprising John, depending on how John looks coming into this fight, because we didn't really get to see him too much against Saragon. He did look big. He looked kind of slow. So, I think Stipe is within a shot of getting this, depending on the changes. Depending on what changes each guy makes. But that's what makes fighting exciting, the unknown parts.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree when you took the words out, the slow part. That John Jones definitely looks slow. And that little bit we saw of him. And people are going to be like, how can you say that? Like, well, he looked a little fat. And he looked a little, but then he basically manhandled a guy who clearly had no answer for him on the ground within a minute and then got tapped out. I don't see that happening this time. I don't see you just going over, taking Stipe down and, giving a leg trip and then putting him like in a choke. I just can't see that happening. So you're going to have to fight him. I just don't know. The funny thing is, on the flip side of this could actually end up, because Stipe hasn't fought in so long, and John, if you take away that minute of fighting, hasn't fought in a long time too. This might not be the greatest exploit for either of these guys by the time we get there. But when we're talking about fights I'm looking forward to, it is very interesting because of all those reasons.
Right. All right, let's see what you got for your number 3.
Number 3, I got Yuri Prochazka versus Alex Pereira. Alex Pereira continues to intrigue me every time he steps out. He continues to show improvement. He is a sophisticated, great striker, and you can see he's putting work in all of his game. I think Jan Blachowicz was a tougher matchup for him. I could see where he didn't win that last fight, but he did show like such a mark of improvement, and he did get the win, that this is going to be very interesting with Prochazka, because I think Prochazka is going to want to strike with him a little bit too. And boy, that's just a dangerous game to play.
All right, let me tell you why this is not on my list.
Okay.
So everyone's very excited for this fight, and I understand all the reasons why. Striking wise, they are very interesting. With Pereira obviously having the advantage, while Yuri is unorthodox and powerful and quick. Prochazka is going to be able to, he's going to need to use that grappling, which we showed that he was able to grapple with Glover. So that is a plus for Yuri, that he can grapple. So I'm not sure if he's going to want to go in there and go for any grappling. The takedowns will be tough because Alex is very large. But if he gets it down there, I mean, Izzy was schooling him on the ground. So I bet he can wrap him up. That being said, Alex does have Glover in his camp. Obviously, they're very close. So he is very close to someone who has already fought Yuri. So he can draw on that knowledge. But I don't think that it's going to be just a striking match. So, and that makes me lean towards Yuri a little bit more.
Yeah, I can see that. So let's just move on here. Let's keep this cooking here. What do you got for your third one here?
All right, 3 would be Paulo Costa versus Khamzat Chimaev for me.
Excellent.
Obviously, everyone's looking forward to this one. It's been a long time since we've seen Chimaev. Paulo Costa's looking extra juicy. I don't know how he passes any USADA drug testing. He's so big, just gifted, I guess. But I'm just ready for Khamzat to be in there, especially back at middleweight. We don't have to worry about the whole weight cutting issue or whatever. But very interesting striking wise, for sure.
I couldn't agree more. That's a fight that I'm looking forward to as well. So much for that's my number 4. So I just had a little bit. So we'll go right there. We're gonna go right to you then. What's your number 4?
I have a weird one. So Sergio Pettis versus Patchy Mix over in Bellator. They're, the bantamweight matchup, maybe the 2 best bantamweights in their division, I think. So I'm looking forward to finally seeing that one. It's really Patchy's time, I think. He's looked so good lately, but Sergio is going to be a giant test for him.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can't disagree with that. That is an interesting matchup. My number 5 is actually, I don't know if you'll have this or not, but I think this is an interesting fight. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson versus Shavkat Rakhmonov. I think this is an interesting fight because Stephen Thompson is getting older, but he still continues to show that he's near the top of the welterweights. And I feel like this is a real interesting fight for him at this point of his career because I feel like I could see him winning and I could see him being in the title mix again at some point, but I could also see him losing and I could see him start going the other way where it's just going to be fun fights. I like Stephen Wonderboy Thompson a lot. This Shavkat is a killer, but I think it's a real interesting fight, and I'm very intrigued by it. I don't know, like to this day, like if you ask me, like I'm not very confident either way on who would win, but I'm probably leaning towards Shavkat. But I think Thompson has a real chance here.
I'm leaning towards Wonderboy. I'll tell you why. Shavkat has looked great, 100% finish rate and all that, but he had real hard time with Jeff Neal, who is a great fighter, but he is not Wonderboy. And just that with Wonderboy, it's very difficult to like touch up. He's a great counter striker, and Shavkat's gonna come forward. And also his takedown defense is among the best in the division for sure. So I think we're going to know after that fight just how good Shavkat is for sure. If he beats Wonderboy, he's world class. Give him a title shot. Give him his opportunity. But I'm leaning towards Wonderboy until this will be when I'll jump on the Shavkat bandwagon if he can get this one. All right. Yeah. The fight I'm looking forward to the most coming up is Islam Makhachev versus Charles Oliveira 2.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a tremendous fight. I didn't put it on my list just because we've seen it before. But it's so from my intrigue point, it's a fight I'm intrigued by, but I don't necessarily have it in my top 5. That being said, if let's say we change the title of this, Dave, tell me who the top 5 most exciting fights you think we're going to have this year. It's going to be this fight. This fight's going to be near the top, probably the top 2. This is going to be Charles Oliveira has all the tools to win this championship back, despite the fact that he ended up getting stopped the last time. I think Oliveira is just that kind of exciting fighter, and he's always in the mix. And I could see this going either way. I'm going to favor Islam. He's the champ, and he's done it before. But I would not be surprised if Charles gets his title back.
Yeah, I think Charles maybe didn't understand Islam's level of striking. So now that he has that awareness, he'll be a little bit more cautious. Not a lot, though, because that's not how he rolls. But I think if these guys fought 10 times, you would see damn near a 50-50 split. So we'll see. But I'm looking forward to that one for sure. Obviously, lightweight division is just tremendous too. So it's a real extra accomplishment to be crowned champion of that division.
For sure. All right, fans. That's the top 5 fights we're looking forward to the most this year. Chevy, why don't we tell people we got coming up one more time?
All right, October 7th, UFC Fight Night, Dawson versus Green. We're getting treated on that one. It's a good one. October 14th, UFC Fight Night, Youssef versus Barbosa. Good striking matchup. And then October 21st, UFC 294. Main event is that fight we're just talking about. Makhachev versus Oliveira 2.
2 p.m. start time. I love it. All right, fans.